big aha moment for me
Hmm.
is that even over this last decade, I have put people ahead of money, but I put time ahead of people.
Hmm.
And I realized that my connections with people may have suffered, or at the very least, not been as rich as they would have been if I had invested time in those relationships.
Welcome to the Physician Family Financial Advisors podcast, where physician moms and dads like you can turn today's worries about taxes and investing into all the money you need for retirement and college.
Hello, physician moms and dads. I'm Nate Reineke, certified financial planner and primary advisor.
And I'm Ben Utley, certified financial planner and the service team leader here at Physician Family Financial Advisors. Nate, we were kind of off the air for a couple weeks. I'm hoping nobody noticed because, we need to take a break around here. But it seems like when I'm talking with new clients and a lot of people more often, they're like, I listened to you on the way to work. And it just feels really good to hear that people are making their drive time more special with us on the
Yeah.
air. So, so I hope they didn't miss as much because maybe they weren't driving to work during that time frame. But we did take a break. In fact, we around the time before the holidays, usually every year for the 2 weeks preceding the holidays, we don't take client meetings and we don't take calls from prospective clients because during that time, sometimes we find that there's end of year stuff and some of that is emergent.
Yeah.
And as you know, it's hard to get anything done during the holidays, particularly financial stuff. And so we just kind of go a little on hiatus. We keep working, we work on projects, and we kind of stand ready. This year was unusual in that we only had two things that were emergent. So it went really well. We got a lot of projects done, and the team is just ready for 2025. So far, it's looking like a huge year for us.
Hmm.
So what did you learn while you were on break?
Yeah, we always learn something, right? I mean,
Yeah.
and by the way, we talk about rest as if it's this thing that you get to give yourself. Like if you're in the right frame of mind, you give yourself some rest. But rest is so essential because I always come back with just some big thing. The funny thing was, it was what I learned was probably less than normal this year, which I actually took as a good thing. It felt like, oh, I don't need major New Year's resolutions this year. I must be doing something right.
Hmm.
But I did, it was interesting because my kids are getting a bit older, like a bit older. My oldest is 6. And what I learned now that they're both communicative, 4 and 6, um, I think that they really crave extended quality time with me and my wife.
Hmm.
They don't get it very often. It's just like anybody listening. It feels like life is always rushed. And so
Yeah.
yeah, they get the weekends and things like that, and they get an hour of dedicated time with dad after work before bedtime. But
Hmm.
like a week of, oh, dad's off at 5, and he could pick you up from school every day, and then
Hmm.
several days of holiday vacation. It was just like, man, these guys, they need a lot of you, or if you'll give it to them, they will take as much as they can get. Read a lot of
So,
kids books.
question.
Yeah.
Um, you're a boy dad.
Yes.
I'm a girl dad.
Hmm.
And I have heard that with boys, in fact, I heard this analogy. It said that boys are a little bit like clams. You have to just sit around and wait for the clam to open up so you can slip in a morsel of information.
Hmm.
And so I've heard that with boys, you have to have you have to have quantity time
Hmm.
in order to have quality time because you kind of
Okay.
got to wait around for them to unclam. With my daughters, I feel fortunate because I can schedule quality time. Like I can go from working 1 minute or being out of the house and 5, 10 minutes later, it's like boom, quality time into a deep conversation, working on a project, we're cooking together or cleaning something out and it's just like boom right there. So have you experienced that? Have you had the clam experience?
It definitely. With my 4-year-old, he is very quiet.
Uh-huh.
And my 6-year-old, and this has been from the day they could make noises. My
Yeah.
6-year-old is just lovey-dovey, loud and excited and happy all the time, and my 4-year-old is sort of uh, a little bit of the opposite, but still very like polite at school. He's just so shy. And so
Hmm.
with my shy one, it's like you don't get to just he doesn't want to sit on your lap unless you've been in the room with him for like an hour. Right.
Hmm.
So that one was obvious to me. What I learned with my outgoing child is that we have a lot of stuff to do in his mind before it's time to open up about what happened at school. So we got to play enough Monopoly, like card games. We have to play with Legos. We have to read a Dogman book, which when I was a kid, it was Captain Underpants, but now it's Dogman.
Uh,
And then we get to talk about something important.
yeah.
And so I definitely have seen that. And you told me that before, so I tried to pay attention. And once I started paying attention, it became obvious that was the case.
So hit me right between the eyes with what you learned on break. What was your takeaway? Aha.
Well, it was sort of just confirming that the boys need more time than an hour a day. Because
Okay.
you listen, like, look, I'm a big podcast listener too. You listen to
Yeah.
podcasts and they're like, look, your kids should be able to play on their own. Now you're trying to make parents feel better about themselves. Your kids
Uh-huh.
should be able to play on your own. My parents, barely played with me at all. And then they're like, look, if you give them 15 minutes, that's all they need. I'm like, okay, I can work.
Oh,
Yeah, I know.
oh,
I'm
it's
exaggerating, but
terrible. Try that with your marriage and see how it
right,
works.
right.
Oh my God.
So throughout the year, as things get busy for all of us, you start to tell yourself these lies like, hey, it's fine. It's fine. They'll be okay. And they will be okay. But if you want to have a great relationship with them, it's like you got to put in the time, put in the
Yeah,
hours, put in the love. So
totally.
that's what I did.
Yeah.
What about you? What did you learn?
Well, it's cold and rainy here in Oregon around the holidays, and so we got out of town and we went down to Cabo San Lucas and spent some time on the beach, which was the intention. It was to get warm and relax, and we took one of our daughters with us. And while I was down there, I was sitting on the beach, and I was thinking, like, I bet they have some good food here. And my daughter is a foodie; she loves to cook. And so I told my wife, I said, maybe we can set up some kind of food tour. And sure enough, they have like six different food tours. And one of those food tours was called Eat Like a Local. And it was put on by a woman who runs Avocado Tours. And when she said eat like a local, I don't know if our listeners have been to Cabo or not, but there's kind of two parts to Cabo. There's the beach side slash strip. It's where the port is, where the cruise ships come in, and it's really built up. It's pretty much Americanized, and it's a little bit Mexico, but it's not a lot Mexico.
Mm-hmm.
And then literally on the other side of the street is downtown Cabo. And that is what I consider local, 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 which is to say all the signs are in Spanish. People actually live there. They're going about their daily lives. There are homes there interspersed with businesses and, just kind of a neat place. No, nothing touristy in that area. And that's where the food tour was. So on the tour, we went to five different restaurants and we had one part of the meal in each one of those restaurants. So we had birria and we had, I ordered track tacos and they're out, unfortunately. We had, mole, some of the best mole in Cabo. And in the process of eating that food, I became familiar with the culture. That's one of the things a tour guide talked to us about is the stark contrast between our Americanized culture and the Mexican culture. What I learned is the people in Mexico are very warm, just warm. Everyone who came to our table, anyone who waited on us, greeted us, the three of us, as family. They said, hello, family, blah, blah, blah. They treated us as a unit. And they regard family in a way that I seldom see here in the States. So that was one thing that I observed. Another thing is that food is central to their customs and their relations. I learned that, for example, if you ask someone for their tamale recipe or their mole recipe, you can have it, but you have to marry into the family to get it.
Whoa.
Whoa is right. Yeah, yeah.
Wow.
No online recipes for the mole. Yeah, you have to marry into the family and then be taught to do it because it's like passing on something in their culture.
Mhm.
So that was fascinating. And I was talking to my daughter. We had a conversation. She's a sociology buff, and we're talking about why men don't listen to women or why they listen less than they talk. right?
Mhm.
So women out there, we're talking all over the podcast, but I promise if we talk, I'll listen more. So I looked at it and it said that in individualistic cultures, like in the United States, that men tend to overtalk women, but in collectivist cultures, seem to listen as much as they talk. So there's more gender balance in communications. And I started thinking about that. And I drilled down a little bit further and I found this concept of what's known as monochronic versus polychronic assumptions and understandings of time. So, monochronic is the realm that you and I are in, which is to say, time is linear and we're running out of it and it's scarce and it's always fleeting, it's going away. Hurry, 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 right? This is the realm that financial planners deal in and a lot of physicians, right? Polychronic cultures view time as abundant, like they've got all the time in the world. So getting the task accomplished is not as important as treating the people well that are part of that transaction,
Mhm.
right? So you may walk into some place to get something and they talk with you. They ask you about your family. They ask you how you're doing. They ask you about your health. And then you talk to them. And then, after 30, 45 minutes, you get whatever you came for. And that's just their culture. It's just how it works down there. So the big picture moment came for me as I was discussing this, and I remember that when I turned 45, I was halfway through my life and about halfway through my career. And up to that point, I had kind of put money ahead of people, right? I
Mhm.
was charging a percentage of AUM. I was getting as much money as I could. And something about that just didn't strike me as right. Thinking about the golden rule, I was like, if I was on the other end of that transaction, how would I feel? I decided, that wouldn't be good, right?
Mhm.
And so I kind of had this aha moment, this epiphany, and it was at that moment that I began restructuring the business to what we have right now, which is a level recurring monthly fee, not based on assets under management, not based on wealth, not even based on how much time things take, really. So that's how we got here. And it took us a decade to get this far, and so now I'm 55. So I'm gonna can it here for you. The big aha moment for me
Mhm.
is that even over this last decade, I have put people ahead of money, but I put time ahead of people.
Mhm.
And I realized that my connections with people may have suffered, or at the very least, not been as rich as they would have been if I had invested time in those relationships.
Mhm.
And I'm pretty sure that those relationships would have been more fruitful, and that as a human being, I would have gotten more out of those relationships over time by being patient and being engaged and really caring about the person on the other end. And, being on the getting end of that while I was down there from the people who approach others that way, I felt seen, I felt cared for, I felt loved.
Mhm.
And when they would touch us or they would guide us places, it was like being among family. And I just thought, I love this. I love the way this feels. And I want the people in my world to receive that from me. And so my new leaf that I'm turning over for the next decade is to put people ahead of time and money.
Yeah. In our culture too, even the people who quote unquote seem to get it. I mean, you and I probably have both fallen victim to this, but people who seem to get it, they say they value time. Um, and but that's not really well defined. Sometimes they mean time with others.
Hmm.
Other times they mean kind of and maybe not in a terrible way, but like selfish time, like doing something for fun that's just for you.
Hmm.
And I think when most of us, if we break it down like you just thought, most people would say time with others, but yet we're
Hmm.
in this culture that is just rush, hurry, hurry, hurry. And
Right.
so, my I don't know if I've ever said this on the podcast, but my wife is Mexican, and so when I go over to, she's from California. When I go over to family in California, and it's uh, grandpas and grandmas are around, they are exactly as you just described.
Okay,
They
so
and
I had totally spaced on that. I totally forgot. I sat across from your mother-in-law and we talked about cooking, and
right,
somehow I did not make that connection till this very moment.
yeah, and it is something that when you're from America, you just can't believe how much you love it. Oh my
Yeah.
gosh, like. it's just like everything you never knew you wanted. Like,
Hmm.
wow, they really care about me. And then you look over and you're like, oh, they care about them too, and them. And funny story about food. First time I went over for Thanksgiving dinner, it was just a, an amazing spread. Food I'd
Uh-huh.
never heard of, food I've maybe only been told about from my
Uh-huh.
spouse. And I started trying it, and of course, like, you have to try everything. They just spent 10 hours making all of it. And
Yeah.
I started with what I thought was like, the tamest thing. It was just like some soup. And all those sweet people that listened to me talk for a long time, and saw me and made me feel heard, they all started to take notice that I was about to eat the soup, and sure enough, it was the spiciest thing I've ever eaten in my life. And I
Whoa.
just kept going because I thought, well, I'm not going to not eat it. And they all, in about 10 minutes, the whole table was laughing at the white guy trying
Yeah.
to eat the spicy soup.
Oh, that is hilarious.
Yeah, it was great though. I
Good
embraced it.
story.
Hmm.
Yeah, I felt like I learned something about how to be human
Yeah.
while I was down there. Something that we're probably all born with that our culture beats out of us, you
Yes.
know? And I mean, of course, there are a lot of great things about the United States, but I feel like that those people in Mexico, and indeed other collective cultures, India, some of the Asian countries, maybe some of the African countries, I feel like they have a wealth that we can't begin to comprehend here.
Yeah. In my thoughts about this, it's just about the closest you can get is just your family. You can
Yeah,
give that right now today if you decide you can give that to your family.
yeah,
Probably not going to get it when you go to the grocery store. You probably aren't lucky enough to work at Physician Family and get it at work, right? But like in your house with the friends you select, you can give that and get that from them. So
yeah,
do our best.
yeah. It's a real gift. This is goes to your point about how physicians can get the things that money can't buy. You know,
Yeah.
the ultimate currency, the ultimate uh, uh, token of exchange, I guess, is attention. It is
That's right.
truly the only thing we have that is 100% ours that we can give that makes others feel special. You know, it's a prelude to love.
Hmm.
And it's so rare these days. It's so rare unless we dig down and just take the time to put into those relationships.
Yeah.
Kind of makes me think about how things probably were in medicine, oh, back in the 60s or 70s,
Hmm.
where, physicians were able to spend more time with their patients before we had managed care. So,
Yeah.
uh, I guess that's my segue. We do still have listener questions, so we are going to get all financial up in here, folks. I appreciate your patience while we wax philosophical. Um,
Yeah.
all right. So Nate, what's our? You know what? I remember what our first question is. That's unusual, isn't it?
All right. Yep.
So
Urologist in Oklahoma.
yeah, urologist in Oklahoma. Uh, Basically is doing the backdoor Roth thing, contributed to their traditional IRA, and then the account grew a little bit before they did the conversion. And so the question was, I contributed $7,000 to my traditional IRA, non-deductible, and when I converted it, it was worth $7,092. Have I broken a rule, or am I going to be penalized?
Yeah, Ben, I think they're gonna be in for a rude surprise when they pay taxes on that $92. No, this is no big deal. You pay your $20 or something in taxes and move on.
Yeah,
Easy peasy.
yeah, that's it. That's it. Better to have the 92 that's taxed
Yeah.
than just the 7,000, right?
Yeah.
But the best is to do your conversion immediately, right?
Mm-hmm.
You put your money in a traditional IRA, in the high yield savings account or some cash account, and then turn around and go, boom, immediately convert it to the Roth. And so it doesn't have any time to grow, and you don't have to invest it before all this happens. But
Yeah.
once it gets in the Roth IRA, you want to make darn good and certain it's invested so that all that growth is tax free forever.
Yes. Yep. Okay, next question is from a vascular surgeon in New York. My wife and I are 37 years old. She currently stays at home with our 3 children. Does she need life insurance? Um, I think that she does need some life insurance.
I think she probably needs a pedicure and some time at the at the therapist.
That's right.
That's a lot of
Yeah.
work, man.
Yeah. And but a little bit of life insurance, and by a little bit, I mean probably $1 million, $2 million worth. But I'll tell you why. Uh, your stay-at-home spouse, they may not bring money in, but they sure as heck save you a lot of money, right?
Yeah.
There's childcare to be paid for. If there was only one parent in the house, even assuming you don't have a cleaner now, taking care of 3 kids and cleaning the house and cooking
Mhm.
dinner and watching them while you're at work, that is expensive.
Okay, hold on. We can keep going.
Yeah.
Chauffeur,
Yeah.
fashion consultant, ER doc, pharmacist, psychologist. What else? Playmate.
That's right.
What other hats do moms wear? Come on, help me out. I don't look like a dope here.
Oh man, the chauffeur is the biggest one for me right now.
Oh, what,
Goodness
personal
gracious.
assistant? Executive assistant. A lot of them
It's
get
like
things done.
it's the new term in the nanny world is called house manager.
Oh, wow.
They're a nanny, but they're also a house manager, which is like they're going to keep the house on schedule.
We're
That
gonna go all the way back to home economics with
Yeah.
that.
And by the way, highly sought after.
Yeah.
That nanny alone, like if they're paid what they should be paid for that level of work, I mean, that's
Mhm.
got to be $100,000 a year for that
I've heard of
level.
nannies actually getting that in New
Yeah.
York City, 100,000 a year. So I mean, you think about it, like, so this person is in New York, right? Vascular surgeon in New York,
Mm,
and nannies up there, the really, really good ones fetch a high price. Let's say that they're fetching $100,000 a year, which is in a lot of cases that's not a whole lot different than the cost of private school up there. So 100,000. Let's say you have a newborn and you're busy and you can't, you can't, whatever.
mhm.
Spouse dies, right? Then what are you going to do? Stop being a physician and take care of a newborn all the time? You're going to have somebody, quote unquote, manage your house. I love
Yeah.
a house manager, right? So let's say that goes on until they're 10 years, 10 times 100,000, that'd be $1 million,
Yeah.
right? But they can't drive at 10. They can't shop for groceries. I mean, you're looking at having help until that child is 16 years old, maybe 18 years old. You probably still want somebody at the house to, uh, you know, be there during part of the day and take care of them. So, I mean, we're talking about easily $1.5 million,
Yeah.
easily.
Easily.
Yeah.
So
So,
life
yeah,
insurance is made to replace whatever you lose if that person were to die.
yes,
That's how to think of it. And there's
yeah,
lots of things to consider for the person who is earning money because there's a lot of saving and spending. But
yeah.
even someone who's not earning money, you are not they are making it so you don't have to spend on certain things. So
Sometimes when people do life insurance needs analysis, which we have done in the past, now we have life insurance guide that gets a lot of this done, but um, they do what's known as income replacement, right?
mhm,
And so some advisors will say, oh, well, your spouse is not earning an income, so you don't need to insure them, right? I think income replacement's not the right lens to look at this through. I think that economic value
mhm.
replacement is probably the way to look at it because those quote unquote services, making air quotes here, have value. They have economic value, whether or not there's an income, there's an imputed income or at least an imputed payroll cost.
Yeah, I've done that a few times for people who are deciding whether or not they want to stop working while their children are young.
Yeah,
And a lot of the time, if you don't make 6 figures, it just doesn't make economic sense to work.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
So, yeah, get some life insurance.
yeah.
Okay, next question. Double doctor family in Pennsylvania. We only spend about $10,000 a month. We have $3.5 million in our IRAs and 401ks with all the money we need for college. At 52 years old, we are totally burnt out. Is there any reason we couldn't retire now? So I'm going to just be honest with the audience. I sort of created this question out of an hour and a half call. Okay, so I took an hour and a half with this family. Um, the woman physician has some really high up position in a big hospital,
Hmm.
and she told me I never even really wanted it. Somehow, she took time off when her children were young.
Hmm.
She got an administrative position, and now she's in a super high up administrative position, making more and working more than she ever thought she ever would. And she's just like, I didn't know what I signed up for here. This
Uh-huh.
is a lot of work. And they've done a great job saving. And I believe them that they don't spend a lot of money because she didn't work for a long time and they still have money. So she wasn't working. Husband making $300,000 a year. They're early 50s, and they got a few $1,000,000. That requires some saving.
Yeah.
And so you look at this and you say you spend 10 grand a month, you have $3.5 million. Seems simple enough. You could do the 4% rule, Ben.
Yeah, I can do the 4%
Yeah.
rule in my sleep. So let's do that. So 4% rule. So let's say they got $3.5 million, and if we multiply that by 4, and then we take 1% of it, so 3.5, 7 million, 14 million. 1% of that is $140,000 a year. And by the way, somebody's managing $14 million for you and they're charging 1%. You're paying $140,000 a year. Shout out to my guy in New York who we've brought on recently, guy, and it's more than that and was paying that. It's incredible. So anyway, I digress. So $140,000 a year is what that would provide. 140 is greater than 10,000 times 12. So, bing, you can check the box on can retire.
That's right.
Or can you?
Yeah.
Or can you?
Yeah, or can you? So I think that's what a lot of people will do. You get sort of a stock jockey type advisor. They might just do that 4% roll in the back of a cocktail napkin. Here's the problem, though. And here's where kind of physicians are unique. All right. Physicians need a plan because of these little differences here. Most people don't accumulate $3.5 million until they're in their 60s.
Correct.
So there's really not a lot of math to do. It's just how much you spend. But there's a few things that would get in the way of these people retiring. And honestly, I haven't finished their plan, but I do not think that they can retire today. And here's the things that get in the way. One, Social Security doesn't start until mid to late 60s.
And if you're doing the 4% rule, it's not even factored in. So
That's true.
it's a positive factor. It's coming.
That's true. Yep.
And that will, so 4% assumes you make those withdrawals forever. But when you hit 65 or 67 or whatever it is these days, then you'd have the ability to take some out. So that would
be in your favor.
You'd be in their favor, yeah.
So, but here's a big one is health insurance. Whenever people say how much they spend, health insurance is just taken out pre-tax. They don't even include that
because the employer pays it.
That's right.
Right. I mean, it's like there's so many things that physicians, particularly physicians that are like in partnership, like I've seen physicians deduct the cost of their cable, their modems, their phone bills, all kinds of travel related stuff, quote unquote vacations, which aren't really vacations, they're work, especially if you're the spouse. Yeah. And health insurance. I mean, geez, I'm 55. And if I look at the health premiums that our firm pays for me, it's on the order of like $1,400 a month.
That's right. So add that to the 10 grand a month.
Yeah, totally.
And then, with your IRA and your 401ks, I mean, maybe not IRAs with the Roths, but your 401k, you have taxes. You got to pay a bunch of taxes still.
Yeah.
Not as much as you pay now, but all of a sudden, you are, well, not to mention the penalties, right? You can't withdraw from an IRA until 59 and a half. There's a new rule with 401ks where you can start withdrawing at 55. Special little rule there, but these folks aren't even 55. And so taxes, health insurance, the way I think of this, our system is built so that the vast majority of society is a contributing member until they're in their 60s.
Right.
And if you want to sidestep that system, you need a brokerage account. There's just really no way around
it. A taxable account is what you're saying.
A taxable account. Yeah.
Okay.
And so if you're a young physician and you think, hey, I'm going to have $4 million by the time I'm in my 50s, all I need to do is just do this set amount of savings. Well, if you want to retire in your 50s, you need to be ready with a big brokerage account.
Yeah.
The answer for this family, I believe, is going to be to adjust their work. They don't need to save a lot more money.
Yeah.
Right. They don't need to put 6 figures in a brokerage account. They need to, I mean, this is kind of it's a dirty word in the physician culture, but they need to coast. They need to
I
coast
love
a
it.
few years.
I love it. Just
Right.
get your tax breaks. Don't save like crazy. Back down on your work schedule a little bit so that it makes this doable or tolerable for what, maybe 5 more years or something like that. And give the money time to grow by 50%, 60%.
That's right.
That's a game changer.
Game
That's a
changer.
game changer.
Yeah, and
And
this
they don't have to quit their jobs.
exactly. And you know, you could get even more creative too. The husband in this situation, he has figured out work-life balance, he told me, and that he could retire. He would enjoy it, but he could also work 6 more years. Um
Let me jump in. Let
yeah,
me jump in. Okay, so we've been talking about this 4% rule.
sure.
Okay.
Mhm.
Now, I remember when the 4% rule came out. I've been in practice that long. People credit Bill Benyon for his work on this, what he calls, I think it's Retire Max or something like that. It's good work. The original study of this was known as a Trinity study because it came out of Trinity University. And the gist of this thing is you have to know what's behind it. It's a rule of thumb, but that's all it is, rule of thumb.
Mhm.
So the gist of it is basically if the portfolio was invested about half stocks and half bonds, and if the stock portion was invested about half small caps,
Mm.
then the 4% rule applies. Okay. But most people are invested just in the S&P 500. And, small caps have not had an outsized performance in a long time, since the 70s, right? So that small cap effect may not be present. But if we look at where we're at today, there is thought of inflation coming from possible tariffs. So if we get inflation, that 4% rule is based on historic inflation, which runs around 3%. If we get 6, 7, 8% inflation again, and that's sustained, that shoots a big hole in the
Yeah.
4% rule. The other thing is the 4% rule came out at a time when stocks were more reasonably valued. And if we look at the Shiller PE ratio, also known as the Cape 10 right now, you can see that stocks relative valuation are at their third highest valuation in US history. And I see you out there. I see you, the person who has all in the S&P 500. You have everything in VTSAX and you're feeling pretty tidy about that. And it's all in stocks. Your day's coming. Your
Mhm.
day's coming because the market is fully valued at this moment,
Mhm.
right? And that's not my call. The last time we saw it was peak was we saw it back in 2000 before the tech bubble popped. We saw it back in 2008. So don't know if the correction's coming, but the point here is that stock valuations in the United States are high.
Mhm.
And so the expected returns from those stocks are going to be lower over the coming decade and 2 decades while you're planning your 4% withdrawal.
That's right.
So
Yeah.
I like 4% because it's back of the napkin. It lets us know if we're in the ballpark, but it is not going to be a line drive. It's not going to be a home run. It's not going to be any of those other nice baseball analogies. You really have to sit down and reach for your kombucha cup, do some planning
Yeah.
like that.
Yeah, I want to take that point and ask if our clients, actual clients, are listening. This is why you show up to annual progress checks. It's
Yes.
not
Show up to your annual progress check.
it's not just to say, did you get all your 401k money in, that's important too. But if these things change,
Yes.
expected returns change. And expected returns are almost certainly going to be wrong. They might be close, but they're going to be wrong. And so we need to adjust as we go.
Better than no plan, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And while we're beating that APC horse, the annual progress check, the other reason you come is things change in the tax code. We have a whole raft of new things that came out this year that were passed in Secure Act 2.0 that just became law effective this year. Some catch-up provisions for people over 60 to contribute to their retirement accounts. It's things like that. They change all the time. So we have a huge checklist that we go through in the annual progress check and make sure that you're getting all the tax breaks that you rightfully deserve.
That's right. That's right. So come for month to
Come
month
to the
compliance.
APC.
Yeah, so I think the answer for young docs is save something into a brokerage account if you want the chance. For these folks,
Yeah.
get creative with your work schedule. If one of
Yeah.
you works and one of you doesn't, I know they can survive on one of these salaries and survive
Yeah.
well. But yeah, so we're really close. We just need a bit of a shift probably in work.
Yeah. It's not about making money. It's about making your life last longer,
Mhm.
making things happier for you at work.
That's right.
Yeah.
Okay, last question is from a nephrologist in Iowa.
Okay.
What is a donor advised fund, and should I use one?
What is it about kidneys? What is it about kidneys that they're so exciting for nephrologists?
Yeah.
No, I'm just kidding. One time I had a nephrologist ask me, he said, "Why do you specialize in physicians?"
Mhm.
And I've gotten that question so many times. I could answer it 7 different ways. They're all good answers.
Mm.
But rather than answer the question, I just asked her back. I said, "What is it about kidneys?" And you know what she said?
What?
Fair.
Yep. That's
Yeah.
funny.
Okay. So donor advised fund. This is just such a hot buzzword. We hear about this a lot these days. First off, it's not a way to make money. It's a way to
Mhm.
save taxes. Okay. But more to the point, a donor advised fund is for charitable giving. All right. So a donor advised fund is a 501(c)(3) charity. So that when you give money or appreciated securities to this charity, you get a tax write-off during the year when that charity receives your contribution. Okay? So that's the beginning of it. The next thing you can do with your donor advised fund, which I say your in air quotes, it's not actually yours. It's a fund that is owned by the charity that you get to advise how it goes. And the word advise here does not mean investment advise. You don't get to pick the stocks and all that good stuff that's in there. You get to pick how the donations are made. You get to advise about where the money goes. So let's say you put the money in the donor advised fund, and next year you decide you want to benefit your school, right? So a school is a charity as well, and so you write to your donor advised fund, or you log in and give instructions, and you make what's known as a grant request. Okay, so what's a grant? Grant is free money for somebody, and it's typically money that comes from a charity and goes, it comes from a person and goes to another charity. In this case, it's going from one charity to another. It's going from a donor advised fund to the charity of your choice. Okay, so that is a grant. What's a request? Well, a request is not a demand. A demand is do this. A request is will you please do this, right? So when you have a donor advised fund, you don't have all the power. You have a voice. And so the donor advised fund will consider your voice. And in most cases, they say, yes, this is the business they're in. But they'll look at that charity. And if it's a good charity and they agree with it, then what they'll do is they'll grant that request. And your grant request goes in and they ship the money to the other charity until your donor advised fund runs out of money and you recharge it or, it runs out. Yeah.
Mhm.
So that's your donor advised fund. That's how they work.
Yeah. So that's kind of what it is. And obviously you said save on taxes.
Yeah.
There's a couple more benefits, and this kind of gets into, I guess, strategy on how people use these. But um,
Yeah.
I won't say necessarily if this is always right or wrong, but this is what people talk about for why you would use it. So
Hmm.
there's something called bunching, which is you can
Yep.
put all your donations in one year. So let's say we have several Muslim clients, and they
Hmm.
have very specific rules on how they give money. And so
Yep.
a lot of them, I've noticed, they set aside money, and it's sort of like the money's there. It's a giving account. I don't know exactly when I'm going to give it, and to be honest, I'm not sure why they don't know exactly when they're going to give it. But if you
Hmm.
know you want to give the money and you want the tax break, and rather than finding a charity or finding a church or something to give the money to, you can
Hmm.
put it in this fund, the donor advised fund, and then get the
Right.
tax deduction while you wait. So,
Yeah.
but another reason would be, let's say you get a big bonus, you don't want to pay so much in taxes, you can give money that you plan on spreading out over the next 5 years, but you're going to put it in
Let
the fund.
let me talk about bunching for just a second.
Yeah.
Okay. So we have a thing called an itemized deduction, right? Or standard deduction. All
Hmm.
right. So you get a standard deduction, and that's whether or not you don't have to itemize. So the government just says, hey, you live here, we're going to reduce your taxable income by the amount of your standard deduction. Now, if you want to itemize, which is to list off all the things that are tax preference items,
Hmm.
and you do this in your tax return, if your deductions exceed the standard deduction, then you should itemize. Okay. However, many people out there give money, but they don't give enough money that it makes sense for them to itemize. And so it's almost as if the tax benefit of that contribution goes to waste because it's lower than the standard deduction. So, if let's say you're right at the standard deduction this year and you want to get the benefit, but you haven't. So what you can do is you can do bunching. So you take your 2024 contribution and you push it over the line into 2025, which is to say you just wait. And in 2025, you basically give twice as much as you would have given in 2024. So you're basically contributing every other year. So you're bunching up these contributions. And by bunching them, you're more likely to exceed the standard deduction.
That's right.
Right? That's the bunching strategy. And a DAF is one of the tactics and tools that you can use in a bunching strategy.
That's right. Yep. Okay. Thank you. You put that a lot better.
Yeah.
And then I wanted to add one more thing. I mean, this is what people talk about. You donate appreciated securities.
Yeah.
So you got a bunch of gain on your stocks and you donate. This is the one I'm not comfortable saying whether or not it's a good idea or a bad idea. But if you think your stocks are expensive right now, which we said that's kind of what we think right now, you could consider at this point, like, well, I know I'm going to make this donation, take some of that taxable account money and put it into a donor advised.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
So here's an interesting thing. Let's say that you have 5 charities that you want to benefit.
Mhm.
And let's say that you want to give each one of them $2,000. Okay, so that's a grand total of $10,000. And let's say that you bought a share of, I don't know, Apple, Tesla, favorite stock of the decade, and you bought it for $1,000 and now it's worth $10,000. If you sell that stock, you're going to have a gain of $9,000 and you're going to pay capital gains tax on it. Okay. So what do? You donate those appreciated securities to the charities. But if you do that directly, then you're sending $2,000 worth of stock to 5 different charities. And that's a direct transfer of stocks. You have to fill out 5 transfer forms and you have to make sure that the securities go over because they're transferred in kind. You can't sell them. And as you're transferring them, the value of them is moving because they're marketable securities. And so at the end of the day, you don't know if the charity is going to get 2,000, 2,200 or $1,800, right? It varies. And you're going to have to go through this with all 5 of those charities. From a paperwork standpoint, it is absolutely a total pain.
Mhm.
But a DAF makes this super simple. If you can link a DAF to your brokerage account, which, spoiler alert, you can through the accounts that we work with clients on, you can transfer those appreciated securities directly from your brokerage account to your donor advised fund. And then the donor advised fund sells those securities, no taxes are due, and then they make that distribution directly to all 5 of those charities. And there's another really cool twist to this. So when you make that contribution, sometimes they find out that it's you, right? If you write a check, they know it's you, and then they hound you for more money and they waste their resources. But you can use a donor advised fund to give anonymously. So they don't know that it's you. And you might do that for other reasons, political reasons or whatever, but it is a way to give anonymously, and it's also painless. You just name the charity and the DAF makes sure that they get the money.
One more thing too is I actually witnessed this in my hometown. Someone wanted to give something to the church, and it was a they couldn't accept it. They couldn't even accept, in this case, the Apple stock. They didn't have a way of accepting.
They didn't have their own brokerage account.
That's right. And
That's what
so
happens. They have to open up a brokerage account at the same institution where
yeah,
you've got your account so they can be a transfer.
that's right. So you probably are helping them out too. So what
Yeah.
what's the only couple of bad things about this I can think of? I mean, it costs money to have the account.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, donor advised funds are kind of like, in a way, they're a little bit like mutual fund companies in that they charge a management fee. And they're kind of like another financial advisor in a way. Some of them charge 1.5%, some of them charge 1%. The places like Fidelity and Vanguard and Schwab, they charge less than others. There's a place that we use that's predominantly online that charges very low rates. And, the rates that they charge, they're not charging you. They're charging the charity that you gave the money to. So in a way, the more they charge, the less your target charity gets.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that would be a downside. I guess setting up the DAF is a little bit of a hassle, but I mean, so is giving money. So
Yeah.
I think that the expense, through of the donor advised fund, to me, that's really the only downside of giving through a DAF.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. So just like any other financial sort of product, find one that's low cost and
Yeah.
do a
Yeah.
little bit
Yeah.
of
Yeah.
paperwork.
Pick a good one where you get real value, where you get a lot for what you pay and move ahead.
Cool. All right. You want to take us out?
Yeah. Yeah, I'll take us out. So, welcome to 2025. I hope you guys are having an awesome year for us. We love your listener questions. You can send those to us, podcast at physicianfamily.com. Um, if you want to kind of check out and see where you're at in the new year, then you can go to physicianfamily.com/quiz and take our retirement readiness assessment. Um, it'll kind of help you figure out where you're at and kind of how things are going for you. So you get a grade and a little report. And of course, if you have questions, you can ask us about that. If you want to start the new year right, and you want to make sure that 10 years from now, you also have good years, then I encourage you to reach out to us. Go to physicianfamily.com, click on the Get Started button, and then take the little quiz to see if you might be a match for us. And if you are, we can chat on the phone. We can talk about next steps. No commitments, free call. So just reach out to us and we'll see if we can help you. And until next time, remember, you're not just making a living, you're making a life.
Thank you for listening to the Physician Family Financial Advisors podcast. Are you getting all the tax breaks you really deserve? To find out, get your copy of the Overtaxed Doctor's Retirement Investing Checklist, available at physicianfamily.com/go. This show is for educational purposes only and is not personalized advice. Consult your tax advisor before taking action. All investments involve risk of loss. Past performance is no guarantee of future results. Read show notes for full disclosure.